Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Alive around the world on the... Whoa, that's weird. Alive around the world on the internet and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station. It is the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live, again, on the internet and across the state on this, your favorite radio station and or translator. Hello, my friends. Hello. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is Tuesday and it is Election Day. Yep, you've been waiting for it. You've been waiting for it. It finally showed up. We are ready to go and ready to talk about it. Boy, do we have a... Well, we got quite a bit of stuff to go over today. So I thought we would just dive into it. What do you say? Shall we get into it and just be part of it? Just get it all done? I think we shall. This morning, we're going to talk a bit about, some election stuff. We'll talk about there's a comment here that I just have to get to from Gail Fanumii, who is the director of the Division of Elections. I have to get to it because it is just, it's insane. It's so wrong. It's so, I don't know, self something. Anyway, we're going to talk about that this morning. We're going to get into that, and we're also going to be talking with our friend Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, who's going to come on board and talk with us this morning about, three things, including the Walker smokescreen, the "It's for the Children" smokescreen. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some clarity and fiscal law. I'm going to get to that here in a second, give you a little bit of a preview of it. And we'll also have a little bit of insight from Conoco's second quarter's earning report. What does it mean for Alaska and more? What does it say about what we're doing here and how Alaska is viewed on the big stage? We'll talk about that as well. So that'll be Brad Keithley with our weekly top three. Keithley, of course, from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, an organization dedicated to just that, sustainable budget. Then in hour two, we'll have a chat with Chris Story, the man from Homer, who will come on board and give us our weekly uplift, our life coaching lesson, our positivity boost, our He is the PMA guru of the state of Alaska. And we will talk with him here in just a bit. Well, more than just a bit. He'll be with us in about just over an hour to talk with us about all the new stuff here. So, good morning and welcome to it. As I said, Election Day. Polls are open at 7 a.m. Polls open at 7, close at 8, and now is the time to jump out there. If you haven't already looked up your polling place, don't just assume that it's going to be where it normally is. I looked it up yesterday just on a whim, and lo and behold, my polling location where I've been going to vote for, I guess, 8 years now, is now at a different location. So you can go to myvoterinformation.alaska.gov. Myvoterinformation.alaska, it's one word, myvoterinformation.alaska.gov. And all you have to do is put in your first name, your last name, and your mailing city. And it will find you on the voter rolls. And it will tell you where your polling location is. And it's pretty simple, pretty easy. I tried it out again this morning just to make sure. And sure enough, my voting location, my poll location has changed. And so we're all going to be going somewhere different. And so I would recommend that you check that out before you drive across town to your normal voting location, just in case. Just in case. All right. So, what do we got? What do we got here as far as news? Well, there's a lot of kind of voter roundups and things where people are being told, given the details on the election itself. But this I will say that this takes the cake. This, to me, there's a quote in Alaska's news source at KTUU that just takes the cake. So here's where the story hits right here. August 16th is a big day for Alaska and the country. For the first time, Alaskan voters will use ranked choice voting for the special general election to determine who will fill the House seat after the death of Republican Don Young. To win outright, a candidate needs at least 50% majority of the votes. If there is no majority, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated. And voters who selected the eliminated candidate as their first choice will have their second choice votes tabulated. Since this is the first year this cycle and style of voting will be in practice, some voters have expressed confusion and said it may deter them from casting votes. Division of Elections Director Gail Fanumii disagrees. She said, "I feel the division has had a pretty strong voter education campaign telling people to expect this." Let me just reread that. Let me read that out loud for you. "I feel the division has had a pretty strong voter education campaign telling people to expect this." Sample ballots are available on our website. They can practice how to rank candidates. It's a matter of filling in ovals, one per candidate, as many candidates as you choose. It's just in case you were wondering, Gail Fanumii thinks she's done a fantastic job of educating the people on how the campaign, I read this morning and I was just like, what? I mean, excuse me? What did you just? Yep, we've done a great job. I feel the division has had a pretty strong voter education campaign. I mean, I'm just asking the question of, whoa, that's like, I don't know. I've been saying it for the last 10 months that what we've really needed is we've needed a voter education campaign that started way back out then and should have run into, several $1 million. I mean, we spend stuff on this state all the time, spend money in this state on things we absolutely don't need, but a brand new voting system that is going to fundamentally change how people cast a ballot. People have been casting their ballots their whole lives, and you've got a system that is going to fundamentally toss that on its ear. Now you're going to have multiple candidates, and do I vote just for one? What happens if I vote for? I mean, there's so much, but don't worry, we had a pretty strong voter education campaign telling people to expect this. Well, I fully expect I fully expect people are going to be confused. I fully expect people will be confused for sure. All right. I just got a I'm sorry. I just got an email. Somebody tried the myvoterinformation.alaska.gov, and it looks like special primary no, that's for the primary. Somebody just said, wait, I just got a information. They snapshotted it for us. Says, does this mean someone requested an absentee ballot in my name? I never did. And because on their My Voter Information, it says absentee ballot request information, and it says by mail. But that was for the special primary election back in March, which everybody got one. I have the same thing on mine, even though I obviously didn't request one, but because they did the whole election by. So if you go to myvoterinformation.alaska.gov, you will see that at the bottom that there is some information on your absentee ballot. That's not because somebody requested an absentee ballot. That's because everybody got an absentee ballot back in March. So if you should happen to see that and be like, whoa, I didn't ask for an absentee ballot. You didn't have to. That's because that was from back in the day in March when they did the special primary. You'll see at the top, it says election 2022 special primary. Everybody got a ballot on that one. So anyway, that's nothing to worry about. Move along. Nothing to see here. Move along. The other story I wanted to get to, and this is just a tease for what we're going to be talking about with Brad Keithley, is that the Alaska Supreme Court has ruled against the legislature, and on behalf of the governor, it has ruled against forward funding for education and confirms the limit on legislative power. The legislature may not set multi-year budgets for public education and other state agencies unless, here's the caveat, unless they are providing the funding up front. That's been a 3-year dispute between the legislature and Governor Dunleavy. It also puts limits on legislative power and sought and signaled some victory for the governor, who had sought to cut funding for K-12 schools and opposed a legislative attempt in 2018 to set the state school budgets for 2 years. That is a welcome piece of news because it proves exactly that one legislature cannot bind another legislature's budgeting power over unto itself, unless, of course, they provide all the funding at that exact moment, which I would think would still be problematic, especially if you've got changes coming to a legislature. If you're in a middle or in the crux of an election year and they've got some money and they try and forward fund it to the following year, I would say that the next legislature should have something to say on how that money is being spent or whatever. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's a separate lawsuit that needs to come in. All right. We're going to jump into this here. Brad Keithley is going to be our guest. Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets up next. It is the Michael Duke Show, being brought to you today by your friends over there at Satellite West. For all your communications needs, no matter where you are, on the tundra, on the water, in the mountains, in the air. wherever. Satellite West has got you covered. You can find out more about that at them at satellitewest.com. The Michael Duke Show continues, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, and or FM translator. We'll return with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Well, my friends, hello, my friends. Good morning. How are you this morning? Look at you. I see Brad Keithley is waiting in the wings. He's hanging out there. I could see him getting things all squared away. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Dwayne says, good grief. I will be glad when I don't have to see any political commercials for a while, especially those with Lisa Murkowski and Bill the Steel Walker. The Steel. That's his nickname. Bill the Steel Walker. A man is no less a slave because he's allowed to choose a new master once in a term of years. That's Lysander Spooner, one of my favorite thinkers from back in the day. Lysander Spooner's always got some good stuff. So today's election day. Do we get the election results in December? No, but we do have to wait. We do have to wait 2 weeks to figure that out. Jim says he's going to vote for Mary Peltola. I have questions, Jim, but I'm not even going to bother at this point. To be fair, I get their YouTube ad dozens of times a day, says Chris. That's why you need to have ad block on YouTube. I have ad block on YouTube, and I never see, unless I'm watching on my phone or on my TV, which I hardly ever am. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Told me, Dwayne says he went to My Alaska, says it couldn't find his information. That's interesting. Thank you for the answer. Sorry to interrupt you. No, that's fine, Bill. I was curious what's going on. Printed out a sample ballot last night after 4 phone calls. I figured it out, said Laura. Oh, man. Has anyone seen the ad on Channel 2? 2 says vote 1 on the local turf below. Then below says ranked choice voting in general. Well, it's because they're doing the special general has got ranked choice voting. And then on the other side of the ballot is all the one vote one and done. Yeah. Glad you reminded us this election day, says Sean. Good luck today, Sean. Good luck on the primary. You got my vote for the primary. And then you'll get a write-in vote for the general, just because that's how I am. All right. Let's see. Looks like Brad Keithley is almost ready. Are you almost ready, Brad?
I am, Michael. I am. I've got this all set up now. I have a note here that says "Happy Birthday, Michael."
Oh, well, I wonder why you have that. That's weird. That's weird. Where did that come from?
Is today not your birthday?
Today's my birthday. I'm just kidding. trying to be humble. Didn't work.
So that election day and your birthday. It's like a national holiday or something.
Like a double whammy, man. I mean, that was like the worst birthday present ever. Here's your ranked choice voting birthday. All right. So you ready to dive into this and jump in?
I am.
Okay, good. Well, we'll get. I'm gonna put you back. I'm gonna hide you back in the green room. You just don't say anything. Eat the donuts and be back to it. All right, we're going to be back with more here in just a second. Brad Keithley, our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Let's do that. Hey, do me a favor. If you guys are out on YouTube today, I am still trying to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And with 3,500 subscribers or followers, not the same, they're basically the same thing. With 3,500 followers on Facebook, you would think that somehow I could get a third of them to just say that they like me on YouTube. Now you say, why? Well, because I'm trying to get, there's like super chats and other subscriber things. And there's some other bells and whistles I can get on YouTube, but I got to have 1,000 subscribers to make it happen. So frustrating to just not be. So I see that there's 50 of you on Facebook right now. I guarantee you there's at least a dozen on YouTube right now. If you get a chance this morning, go over to YouTube. You can leave Facebook or stay on Facebook, but go over and subscribe and like it, will you? Here we go. All right. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. It's time to get into it. It's time to jump in and talk with it, do the weekly top 3 thing. Brad Keithley is our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, dedicated, well, to creating sustainable budgets in Alaska. That's what they're all about. Let's get the start on here. Good morning, Brad. How are you, my friend? What's happening in your neck of the world?
Michael, I'm great today. Thanks for asking. And by the way, happy birthday, Michael.
Well, thank you. That was awful nice of you to wish me a happy birthday on this election day. I don't know why it had to happen on the same day. That seems like cruel and unusual punishment. But we are ready to go. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. Weekly top 3 today. Now, I would have assumed before you sent me all what you wanted to talk about, I would have assumed today that it would all be about elections for today, but no, we've skipped right over to let's talk about what's coming up in November. Brad's already like forecasting forward. Bill Walker, it's for the children. That seems to be his new mantra, and well, Brad, tell me all about his "It's for the Children" shield that he's throwing out there in front of people to talk about right now.
Well, just to explain why we're not talking about the election, we've talked about it like on the last 3 shows. And I thought,
exactly.
As Mike Shower puts it sometimes when he and I have a discussion, ad nauseum. So I thought maybe
ad nauseum, yeah. Hey, you know what? You just got to repeat and repeat and repeat until people get the message. That's what you got to do. So, but let's talk a little bit about, because we really are coming down to it. Here we've got, Bill Walker, Les Guerra, Mike Dunleavy, and then the fourth, who we're hoping is going to be Charlie Pierce. But, we've got Guerra and Walker. These are the 2 choices that I definitely personally do not want to see in the state. Bill Walker primarily because we've already seen what he's going to do. We already had a preview of upcoming, of upcoming attractions, and it's not attractive.
No, well, Walker's got this new ad campaign out that's interesting. It's I've seen it on Twitter and I've seen it on Facebook. I'm sure it's showing up other places as well. But it has Jennifer Johnston talking over some pictures of the governor's mansion and some Walker Dragas campaign posters. And explaining why she's supporting. Now, this is the defeated Jennifer Johnston, right? Former vice chair of the House Finance Committee and defeated for a reason.
Right.
Talking about why she's supporting Bill Walker. And basically the theme is one we often hear in Alaska. It's for the children. In her case, it's for her children and grandchildren. And the pitch basically is we need to save the permanent fund today, to build it up to, as Walker puts it in his campaign literature, in his positions statement on his website, we need to build it up to 100 to 120 billion dollars, and then it will produce revenue forever that can fund government forever, and we never have to worry about other sources of revenue in the state. The problem, and so it's for the children, it's for my children, it's for my grandchildren. That's why we need to sacrifice today by putting as much of the permanent fund earnings back into the permanent fund as we possibly can and limiting PFDs. The problem with that It's great if you're a top 20% child. It's great if you're the top 20% now, because that means that we use the permanent fund earnings stream to fund government currently. The remainder of the earnings go off back into the permanent fund to build it up toward this nirvana number. Permanent fund dividends are cut to do that. And who takes the brunt of the cut? Middle and lower income Alaska families. What children take the brunt of the cut? Middle and lower income Alaska family children. So there's this promise of a nirvana out there someplace that we get to if we make this sacrifice now and we build up the permanent fund to a point where it can fund government at some point out in the future. But what happens when we get to that point? The same thing. We have to continue to cut permanent fund dividends, because at that point we're diverting almost all of the permanent fund earnings to support government to achieve this nirvana of not having to need other revenues. What children get affected? What families get affected at that point? Those in middle and lower income Alaska families, the top 20%, continue to skate by. What children get affected at that point? The children of middle and lower income Alaska families. So basically, this pitch of it's for the children is a smokescreen. It is for the top 20% now, and it's for the top 20% in the future. It's for the top 20% children now, and it's for the top 20% children in the future. And in Alaska, we have these pitches all the time, and we're very susceptible to them because, as Alaskans, we do worry about future generations. The native culture teaches you to worry about, generations, 20 generations down the road. We do worry about the children, but you can't, but they're using that theme. It's for the children as a smokescreen to cover for just, making the top 20%'s life easier now by diverting PFDs to fund government, or deferring PFDs to build up the permanent fund corpus. And it's for the top 20% children and top 20% families in the future, because you have to continue to cut the PFD. You have to continue to keep the PFD down in the future. Another ad he's running is from Ivy Sponholz. And that's sort of between Johnston and Sponholz, you're sort of giving the game away, right? Because when Johnston was co-chair of House Finance, she was an advocate of a 25-75 PFD, a deep cut in the PFD down to just 25% of earnings. Sponholz, this last legislature, sponsored legislation, pushed legislation out of House Ways and Means, which she chaired, to do the same thing, to cut the PFD down to 25% of permanent fund earnings, and still to do that by statute, not even to put that in the Constitution, still to do that by statute, so they could So they're really, I mean, between those two ads, they're really, game is cut the PFD, save the top 25% from having to contribute materially toward the cost of government, both now and in the future, cut it down to 25-75, and the top 20% and their children are fine. It's middle and lower income Alaska families that take the brunt of it, both now and in the future.
Oh, but don't worry, Brad. Those lower 75%, they get all those government services. They get all those government services that we provide. I mean, forget about the fact that argument is so flawed, because even if you would say that the bottom 25% would get a significant, it leaves the vast unwashed middle who are not receiving any of those special services out in the cold, and they're the ones that are bearing the full brunt of paying without getting anything.
Exactly. And Michael, that argument also has another big flaw. I mean, when you talk about the programs for lower income families in other states and nationally, the burden of those programs, the cost of those programs, is spread throughout, whatever the tax base is, federally, whatever the progressive income tax gives you, in states, whatever sales tax, plus some states have income taxes, whatever that base gives you, a much broader base. When you talk about doing it through PFD cuts, what you're talking about is making lower income families pay for their own programs, right? We're not spreading the cost throughout the entire base. We're focusing the cost on the lower income families. So basically, it's it's a program to keep the lower income families poor. It's not to give them a leg up as it is in other states or nationally. It's basically you have to pay for your own programs, and we decide what programs you're going to have to pay for. It's an entirely wrong argument to say, yeah, we should cut the PFD because those lower income families are getting benefits. That's not the way lower income programs are intended to operate. They're intended to be funded by a broad base to help give lower income families a leg up. Here, the way we're doing it, we're making sure that poor families stay poor.
Right. Brad, this is a rehash too, by the way, of Walker's previous, plan or outline that he had while he was governor, where he talked about converting the permanent fund into this sovereign wealth fund. I mean, that's what this was all about. This was never about getting Alaskans the money that was actually theirs, money that belonged to them, and getting them their share of the resource wealth. This was always about, and always has been about, funding the government. Donna says in the chat room right now, it's actually for the unions, not for the children. It's about funding government and the employees and the base of that at the expense of the private sector.
Yeah. You see that in the legislature with Zach Fields. Zach Fields is a perfect example of that. Zach Fields is one of the biggest champions of PFD cuts, not because he thinks the top 25% deserve any special treatment, but because he's concerned if you maintain the PFD and have to fund government through broad-based taxes, that the top 20% will push back on spending. And so what his view of the world is, let's continue to fund it through PFD cuts. Let's not engage the top 25%. Let's not make them contribute to it, because, oh my gosh, they'd actually see the cost of these things and they'd say, oh no, we don't want to fund that anymore. As long as you can make it free to the top 25% or minimal cost by using PFD cuts, trivial cost by using PFD cuts, they won't engage, they won't push back. We've seen that in the legislature because von Imhoff will never push back on spending. Von Imhoff will only say we need to cut the PFD to pay for it, because that way you shove the cost of middle and lower income Alaska families. Donna's exactly right. It is a way, at least among the Democrats, the cut the PFD mantra is a way to maintain government spending on programs that we want, even though we're forcing lower and middle income Alaska families to pay for it, to pay for the programs that are supposedly helping give them a leg up. They continue to do that because they want to maintain the funds flowing to government spending without the top 20% becoming engaged in critically thinking about what the heck we're doing in this state.
Brad Keithley is our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're talking about the weekly top three, just finishing up with Bill Walker's "It's for the Children" mantra, and that leads us on to our second one, which is the new clarity that we just got from the courts. Give us a quick tease, Brad, and we'll come back to it here after the break. Well,
the Dunleavy administration is often mocked for filing lawsuits and not winning. This one they won. And it's provided some clarity, I think, that's useful around fiscal policy and what legislatures can and cannot do. Up until now, we've been experiencing sort of legislatures run amok, cutting the PFD without gubernatorial oversight, stuffing money away in various pots without much gubernatorial oversight. And this puts some constraints on what the legislature can do. So I think it's worth talking about as we talk about fiscal policy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is a big victory, and I can't wait to get into the weeds on it and talk a little bit more about it. Brad Keithley is our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with Brad Keithley. Make sure you come check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. If you'd like to be part of the program in between the breaks, come on back and let's do it together. You can also find us on YouTube, youtube.com/The Michael Duke Show. We'll be back with more Common Sense Radio right after this.
What is that?
Common Sense, regularly heard on American radio.
Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Let's see.
I got to tell you, Michael, I like the new technology.
Do you? It's looking pretty cool. Works a little bit better.
I can cut down on one computer. Used to, I needed to have 3 screens in front of me to keep track of what was going on, but now I can cut down to just 2.
I can't wait for you guys. I'm going to snap a picture this next weekend of there's going to be 5 screens in my studio by the time this whole thing is said and done. 5 separate screens and 2 computers. I'm upgrading some stuff to try and make it a little easier. And it's going to look like mission control in here, but it'll make life a lot easier. So I feel your pain, Brad. I feel your pain. When I'm trying to do this and I'm doing it remotely, when I have to go to Fairbanks or whatever, I end up doing the whole show on a single laptop, and it is a hot mess because you're switching screens like every 5 seconds. You're switching programs to see what's going on. I think Donna's comment is pretty much nails it right down to, I'm going to come back to it again. It's actually for the unions, not the children. And I think Donna's 100% right. This exactly shows us why they care more about the government spend than about the private sector spend. It's not for the children. It's for government programs and protecting the unions and everything else. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Zach, as I say, Zach Fields just personifies that. I mean, Zach Fields, the representative of one of the poorest areas of Anchorage, supporting, pushing, indeed, PFD cuts in order to create revenue. It just explains everything, right? Because Zach Fields does not want the top 20% engaged in oversight of government spending. He just wants it to come off the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families, fund government programs that even benefit the top 20%, wants it to come off the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families. So the top 20% will never, ever, ever get involved in oversight of what's being spent. And with that, I mean, because that's the donor class, with that, just government just runs amok, as we've seen.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's just a mean comment. Kenneth says, am I banned from having candles on my cake because of the fire risk? We couldn't find enough candles. That was the first problem. Is that there was not enough candles in the store to cover the cake. So that's just the first. That was just mean. Brandy says, I live in Kenai and my district place to vote doesn't seem to be on the list. I haven't a clue what to do next to vote today. Well, I guess first and foremost, I'd go over to my normal polling place and find out if they're there. And if not, ask where they are. Somebody else said that their polling location was not on the list of myvoterinformation.alaska.gov. Like I said, don't worry. Gail Fanumii says they've done a great job of putting us all together. So I'm sure that makes it true. I don't know what to tell you. Like I said, I would show up at my previous polling place first and be like, where do I go from here? If they don't have the answer, somebody's got the answer. But this is where you go right here. I just dropped a link in the chat room if you want to click it, and you can head out there. It's again, myvoterinformation.alaska.gov, and I appreciate that. You're going to need an air conditioning system for the studio. No, trust me, in the middle of winter, I need a heater in here. It'll be fine. It'll only be bad in the middle of the summer for a week or two. Let's see here. Going back here. 24.5% of Alaskans are under 18. Can you get much lower income than that? I mean, I think that was Brad's point, Paul, is that the under 18 crowd are the ones that are definitely, I mean, they're paying for it, not just at the state level, but at the federal level and everything else. It's the future generations, the younger and the future generations, Brad, who are going to pay for all this fantastic government that we have right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, middle and lower income Alaska children of middle and lower income Alaska families now, children of middle and lower income Alaska families in the future. You gotta, I guess, admire Walker for trying to blow his way through this by using the "it's for the children" mantra, but it's dishonest. I mean, it's not for the children; it's for certain children, certain privileged children children of the top 25%, top 20% income bracket.
Right.
And it's just it is a misleading and duplicitous and dishonest theme that he's trying to push.
Absolutely. Chris says, I was mailed a new voter card, tells me where to go. This audience should be a little more competent. Except for, Chris, I haven't received new voter cards. I know that they went out with the redistricting and everything else, but my family, we've not received our new voter cards yet. So again, I guess my question is, how good a job is Finumiai and company doing? You be the judge. I'm saying that they probably could have done better. Let me just put it that way. All right, coming back to it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share, like and follow, subscribe on YouTube. All right, welcome back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We're continuing now. Brad Keithley, our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. We're on to number 2, which has to do with this recent case that just came out day before yesterday, talking about how the legislature can no longer forward fund different things. They've been doing this for a while as an end run around both the governor and future legislatures. And finally, the courts kind of smacked him down and said, no, Brad, let's talk about this.
Well, this case arises out of an action the legislature took in 2018 before the election of Governor Dunleavy. What that legislature did was not only fund then your current K through 12 education, but they also appropriated money for the following year, K through 12, and set it at a certain amount. When Governor Dunleavy came in, his proposal was to reduce the funding to K through 12 in his first budget in the 2019 or in the 2020. That would be the 2020 budget, 2019, but yeah, 2020 budget. His proposal was to reduce spending in that budget. And the legislature said, you can't do that because we've already appropriated it. You can't backward veto, essentially, something that we've already appropriated. And while the new legislature could reduce it by reappropriating funds, because it was still controlled by the coalition, they weren't about to agree to reduce the appropriation they had made. So so this matter went to court. Governor Dunleavy at first said, Kevin Clarkson, who was then the Attorney General, first said there's no appropriation because you can't do the carryover appropriations the legislature tried, and you haven't done a new appropriation. There's no appropriation. There's no funding for schools. That caused obviously a lot of consternation, and so the settlement that they reached at that point was the governor would agree to would agree to the appropriation that the legislature had made in 2018. But the case would continue. This is that ultimate case now being decided by the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said the 2018 legislature couldn't do what it tried to do because it didn't have the funds. It didn't have the funds in hand. There wasn't enough of a surplus that year, if you will, against other funding. There wasn't enough of a surplus to be able to actually set aside actual funds that the state was going to receive during the appropriation year to forward fund the following year. And so the legislature's action was inappropriate. Now, because there had been a settlement between the Dunleavy administration and the legislature when the suit was going on, there's no immediate consequence of that going backward. There's no defunding of K through 12 going backwards. But going forward, it does tell the future legislatures, that you can't essentially take a shot in the dark and appropriate what you think are going to be funds available in future years. You can use the funds you have in the year in which you're doing the appropriation, but you can't make up dummy appropriations, essentially of what you think is going to be received in future years. So this past year, this is an example of the other side of this. This past year, because of the surge in oil prices, the legislature had more revenues than it made current appropriations for. So one of the appropriations it made was to forward fund K through 12 funding next year.
Right.
The court's ruling essentially says you can do that because you've got the funds in hand this year. You can spend those funds because they're coming in the current appropriation year. You can spend those funds any way you want to. You can make capital appropriations. You can put them into savings. You can forward fund. You can use them for supplemental funding, as the legislature in fact did for the prior fiscal year. And so that's okay because you have the funds in hand that year. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily ties future legislatures. In any given appropriations year, the legislature can make reappropriations of funds that have been previously authorized for other things.
Right. So if a new legislature comes in this year and we change a bunch of the players out, they can actually go back to that $1 billion forward funding and said, well, that was a nice idea, but we need the money to be doing other things. And so they can reappropriate it at that point. Well, I mean, and I'll be honest with you, some of the most interesting things that were out in this decision that came from the Supreme Court. Remember, this has already gone to Superior Court, and the Superior Court backed the legislature. But the Supreme Court said in a plain reading of this, it's very clear what the framers' intent was, is that it would be an annual budget process. They would not be binding over other legislators and making this. It was really a plain reading of the Constitution, which I found pleasantly surprising.
Well, it's the same plain reading, frankly, that they used in the permanent fund dividend decision. They said there that one legislature can't bind another, that you can't essentially have done advance appropriations, dedicated funds by statute. You can do it by Constitution, but you can't do it by statute. So essentially, it's the same theme that we see showing up now in this decision. One legislature can't bind future legislatures by making dummy appropriations that set aside funds that this legislature doesn't yet have. I mean, essentially, this finding could have said you could have forward funded the permanent fund dividend from the surpluses you had this year. It would not be inconsistent with the court's 2017 decision on the permanent fund dividend by saying this decision says this legislature could have advance funded, pre-funded, forward funded the permanent fund dividend next year by using some of the surplus funds it had this year. So it is a theme that is consistent with what the court found in 2017, but now it's sort of coming back to haunt, if you will, the other side, the K through 12, the education side, and other sides that depend on government funding. It's like, oh no. I mean, what the 2018 legislature was trying to do was hedge their bets, right? If Walker lost, they still wanted to have K through 12 funding locked in.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. I mean, I think this is good because, again, it shows and separates out both the administrative and the legislative power. It shows what they can do. We'll have to keep an eye out on what goes on with that. But that leads us down to the last 4 minutes here or so, which leads us to number 3, which is a dissection of the second quarter earnings report from Conoco Phillips. Now, we hear a lot about this. The oil companies are making tons of money. They're doing in Alaska and everything else, and we should be getting our fair share. What does it tell you, Brad, as a former oil and gas consultant and attorney? What does it tell you as you look at the Q2 Conoco report of the state of oil and gas in Alaska? What does it mean for us?
Well, there's two things I think that come out of the second quarter earnings report. One is Conoco reaffirmed that they're committed to the Willow project and the if with a big if. And the big if is if the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, the federal government, approves the scoped down, they agree to, and if the federal government approves the scoped down alternative that the federal government included in their supplemental environmental impact statement. But the big if is if the federal government approves that frankly, with no further conditions. What Conoco used, the term Conoco used, was a strong record of decision. If the government comes out with a strong record of decision that supports the alternative, then great, it looks like we're going forward. But what they're really raising in subtext is, if you put a bunch of conditions on that alternative scoped down from what we wanted, we can live with it. But if you put a bunch of conditions on that alternative, we're not sure we're going forward. And so we're going to wait to make the commitment, the financial commitment of going forward until we see that record of decision. So we're still sitting out there. That's one thing from the 2Q report. The second thing, Conoco spent a long time talking about their positioning in the LNG market, the liquefied natural gas market, and how they're making investments both in the U.S., in Mexico, in an export terminal being built in Mexico, and in an export terminal being built in Qatar, in the Middle East. They spent a long time talking about their belief in and their commitment to LNG projects. Well, they've got a lot of gas sitting up here on the North Slope, and the two companies that were historically committed to the LNG project were Exxon and BP. Conoco was always sort of hesitant about its role in the LNG project, and they didn't even bother mentioning the Alaska position when they were talking about LNG. I think what that tells us is additional confirmation that the Alaska LNG project is very marginal. The economics of it don't work very well, and that at least even in today's world where LNG is having a big boost and the LNG market is becoming robust, that the Alaska project doesn't have a place in it. The absence of talking about Alaska in this extended discussion they had on LNG generally tells us a lot about what they think about an Alaska LNG project.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, down to the last 90 seconds here or so, Brad. So we'll keep watching for these reports from Conoco and others to see where we sit in Alaska gas. But today's election day. So your final thoughts as we wrap things up for the show today.
Charlie Pierce. We've talked on the previous show how important fourth place is in the governor's race, how critical fourth place could be in the governor's race. And we've talked about the concern I have about, whether the Kirka voters would just be bullet voters and not mark a second preference on their ballots. Pierce voters, I think, are much more inclined to vote for a second preference for Dunleavy if that's sort of where we end up. And I think it's critical that Charlie Pierce be elected, have that fourth spot in the runoff for the governor's race. So I'm going to vote Pierce, and I encourage anybody else who's still undecided out there to vote Pierce.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think at this point, I think Charlie's still the best candidate, regardless of but if we're thinking about, kind of strategically what needs to come out of the ranked choice thing, in the bottom line, I would rather have even a Dunleavy over Guerra or Walker at this point. So Pierce for the primary, and then Pierce and Dunleavy when you're ranking the red in the fall. And of course, everything else that's going on today. It's going to be an exciting day. Brad Keithley, thank you for coming in, my friend.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we got more coming up. Hour 2 dead ahead. Chris Story will be joining us. We may take some phone calls as well. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. All right, Brad, that brings us back to the top of the hour. So give you a chance to... I don't know if there's anything we missed, anything else you'd like to summate or talk about. We live for that. We live for that right now. Talk.
Other than singing happy birthday to you.
Oh, please don't do that. It's just painful at this point. It just hurts. I can't carry a tune in a bucket. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm just a little lost today. I'd like to get your comments on the whole Gail Fanumii thing where she said, we did a great job. I mean, let's pat ourselves on the back for what a great job we did at educating Alaskans for what's going on.
Well, I read as much as I possibly could read out there, not only from the state, but also from various other sources that were analyzing how the ranked choice election was going to run and, give preferences on one side of the ballot and single. And then I finally got the ballot in front of me, right? I'm voting absentee. So I finally got the ballot in front of me. And I sat there and I just scratched my head. All right, I'm supposed to do this over here and this over here. And I want to make sure Charlie Pierce finishes fourth, but to make sure he finishes fourth, I got to vote for him as a single point. And it was it was an experience. I don't know if you've early voted there, but it was an experience to actually go through the process. I wonder, for those people who are going to line up like they usually do on election day and go through the process, I wonder if it's going to take longer with people going into the booth and sort of.
I would imagine. Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, and I've talked to several people who are election volunteers, and they were really not looking forward to this because they're saying that they knew that there was going to be a lot of confusion going on and people who were going to be agitated and angry, and probably a lot of ballots that were going to be destroyed and have to be redone because people didn't understand it. And it's going to be a poo parade.
And the other thing that's come out from Funumi that I understand why, but it's still a little aggravating. We're not going to know the winner unless somebody gets 50% today. Unless somebody has 50% at the end of voting today in the congressional race, in the special election race. Unless somebody has 50% at the end of the day today, we're not going to know who wins that race for another 2 weeks, because they're not going to count the second preference ballots. If nobody gets 50%, you go to the second preference ballots of the person finishing last. They're not going to count the second preference ballots until the end of the month, when all of the ballots are supposed to be in, when all the ballots that are in will be the ones that are counted. Anything received after that date will be discarded. And so they're not going to count those. They're not going to count the second preference until we get to that point. So we won't know. What we'll probably know at the end of the day, if you believe the pollsters, is Mary Peltola is ahead. Either Palin or Begich is in second, and the other one's in third. We will think we know that whoever is in second, whichever of the two Republicans is in second, will probably win, because the second preference ballots of the third person will likely go mostly to the other Republican and will likely push the other Republican above. We will think that, but we won't know that, and we won't have a representative for another 2 weeks. We won't have the results. So think what that means. Think what that means in the governor's race when we get there in November. It means we won't know who the governor is until late November.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Extrapolate that out till November. That means that we won't even know till the 21st, 24th of November who the governor is actually going to be. And then they have to produce a budget 12, 15 days later. Wow. That's all I could say is wow. It's going to be a real crazy time. Let's put it that way as we come close to this.
It is. And especially if Kirk is in fourth. I mean, I go back to a theme here. Especially if Kirk is in fourth, there's going to be a lot of, let's say Dunleavy has 47%, 45%. And Guerra and Walker have split their vote evenly. And so you got Kirk or you got Pierce in fourth. There's going to be a lot of speculation about, if Kirk especially is finished in fourth, about whether his voters were bullet voters, whether they marked a second preference or not. Because if they didn't, and that Dunleavy doesn't get over the top as a result of the failure of the second preference, then you're gonna let either Walker or Guerra, who's ever finished third, decide the race, and we're not likely going to like that race. So we're just going to. November is going to be a very interesting month as we sort of wait around for twiddle our thumbs, waiting for the results.
I'm going to be waiting for the reaction over the next 2 weeks. You're going to see the reaction from the primary. From what people had to do with the two types of voting and everything else. And I think that will be very telling on what the post-November 8th feel is going to be. And I will be surprised, like I said earlier, if for some reason we don't end up with a move to repeal ballot measure number 2 when it's all said and done. That's just my take on it.
Well, there's going to be those who will have a basis for thinking that, because it's not going to be like elections that we're normally used to, where we wait around on election. I mean, Landfield's going to have an election night special, right? He's going to have guests in. They're going to talk about the election. What's to talk about? I mean, the real election night special is going to be 2 weeks later when the second preference ballots come in.
Right.
So
We don't know a thing. Right. Exactly.
it's just going to be all sorts of speculation on the special night. Nice to watch, fun to watch, but it's just going to be all sorts of speculation.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, as always, we appreciate you coming on board, sharing your thoughts with us. And we look forward to talking next week. We'll have a little bit more information on the election. We won't have the answers, but we'll have some of them anyway. And I hope we'll have some good discussions then. Thank you so much for coming on board,
Michael. Always good to be on. And one last time, happy birthday.
Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate it. We're all getting older, unfortunately. That seems to be the theme around here. Brad Keithley, thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming on board. Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad Keithley, our guest here on the Michael Dukes Show. All right, we are coming up to it. Let's get to it. Here we go, the Michael Dukes Show.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
Sounds just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the interwebs and around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, hour 2 of the big radio show. And again, broadcasting live across the state on radio stations, FM translators, go-karts, transistor radios, carrier pigeons. We're doing it. We're trying to bring the information to all of you all of the time. Election day. Today is election day. And I got to tell you, it's going to be a very interesting day today and tomorrow, especially in the post-election. We're going to see exactly what people think about this whole ranked choice voting thing, because I see some confusion. Even here in the chat room today, I see some confusion. Let me just highlight a post that just popped up from YouTube, where Jonathan says, today I am voting number 1 Kirk, number 2 Dunleavy, number 3 Charlie, number 4 Walden. You can't do that. You can't do that, Jonathan. That's not how it works. Today is not ranked choice voting for governor. Today is the primary for governor, which means you're voting for one. You're voting to choose essentially for one candidate. And quite honestly, you're choosing who's going to be the 4th candidate. If you're voting outside of the top 3, which would be Dunleavy, Guerra, or Walker, you're choosing who's going to be 4th, because there is no ranked choice voting today on the governor's race. The only ranked choice today, and there will be 2 sides of the ballot, my friends. One side will be ranked choice voting for the special general election race for Congress. So that's going to be today. On the other side will be the jungle primary for governor, for Congress again, because remember, on the other side is the special general for the short-term seat, for the 3-month seat, but you're going to have to vote again in November for who's going to fill that seat out for the long term. So you're going to have governor, Congress, U.S. Senate, and then your state house and your state Senate seats. Those will all be jungle primary. Vote 1, and that's it. You get 1 vote on those items. And so, I mean, that's what's going on. This is why I'm encouraging people today to vote for Charlie Pierce in the jungle primary for governor, because again, what I'm seeing is more and more people who have been in the Kirka camp saying I'm only going to vote for one candidate on the ranked choice voting. I'm not going to give my vote to Dunleavy again because he's betrayed me, or which again, I'm not saying those aren't valid points. I'm not saying that he hasn't failed us as a governor. But my question becomes, would you rather have a Bill Walker or a Les Guerra as governor? Because who is in that fourth slot is very important. Because if you're willing to rank the red, then you have given the chance for at least either a Charlie Pierce, for example, or a Dunleavy to take the seat. But if you don't and only vote one, if you're a bullet voter and just vote one and done on the ranked choice in November, the statistical likelihood is that we will either have Bill Walker or Les Guerra as governor. I'm glad I clarified that. I'm glad it's all clear as mud now. Don't worry, Gail Fanumi says, we've done a great job. KTUU reports, says, Fanumi says, I feel the Division of Elections has had a pretty strong voter education campaign telling people to expect this. I feel it's been a pretty strong voter education campaign. I mean, I'm glad you feel that way. I think the rest of us are still, obviously, Jonathan's point in the chat room is that he still thought today that he was ranking it's going to be confusing for a lot of people. And I think that that's important. So clarifying, today is voting day. So first and foremost, you got to figure out where you're going to vote, because it's probably changed. Your normal voting location more than likely has changed. So you need to go to myvoterinformation.alaska.gov. myvoterinformation.alaska.gov. And you put in your first and your last name and the city, your mailing city, wherever you get your mail, whatever city you get your mail, and it will pull it off of the voter rolls and tell you where your polling location is. So first and foremost, you need to know that. Then you need to know that when you go to the polling location, you're going to get a ballot that on one side is ranked choice voting for the special general election, the Congress seat. And then on the backside will be the jungle primary for all the seats that were going to be available. Again, the governor's race, the Congress seat, the U.S. Senate seat, and then the state House and the state Senate seats will all be on the backside. So there you go. If you just recently, I know many people have been saying that they've been getting their voting cards in the mail. They're new because everybody got a new voter ID, right? Because the redistricting causes them to generate a new voter ID. If you've received your vote, not all of us have. I still have not received my new voter card. My family has not received their new voter cards. But on the back of those voter cards, it will tell you where your new polling location and precinct is. Okay? So that's it. Today is the day. Today is the day to go out and let your voice be heard. My encouragement is that you vote your conscience. I am going to be voting for Chris By for Congress. That's just me, because I already know that the three that are going to end up, I know it's going to be, for the ranked choice, I know there's going to be the three. I'm going to vote for Chris By and Nick Begich, and then Sarah Palin. That's just me. I know in the jungle primary that in most of those seats, I know who's going to end up there. So I'm voting my conscience. I'm going to vote for Charlie Pierce. I'm going to vote for Sean Thorne. When it comes down to the ranked choice in November, if Sean is on fourth, then I will be voting for Sean Thorne, and I'll be voting for Kelly Shabaka. I know I'm not going to be voting for Lisa Murkowski. I know I'm not going to be voting for Mary Peltola. I'm going to be ranking the candidates that I believe have it. But again, now, November, differences, jungle primaries, ranked choice votings. The whole thing is a hot, sticky brown mess. This is just what it is. But you gotta go through it. You gotta get into it. You gotta go through it. You gotta make it happen.
Thanks for
all right, we're going to be talking with Chris Story here in a few moments, but why not? We've got looks like we actually already have some lines on hold. I was just going to open up the phone lines for your comments today to see where you stood on this, and it looks like we already have a line on hold, and so we'll jump over there here as soon as my phone system finishes booting up and connecting to everything. We will jump over there and see what you guys have to say. 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. Let's go over here, and we'll take the call right now. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Representative Christopher Kirka.
Hello, Representative. How are you, sir?
You know what? I am tired. My back hurts, but I am doing so much better than I deserve.
Okay, well, good. What's on your mind here?
Well, hey, I heard you talking about just a minute ago the budgets and oversized budgets and the PFD, and then I heard you talking about the ranked choice voting here, and I think it's interesting. There's a misconception here that people that are voting for me for governor somehow belong to me, but they have their own opinions, and just if they don't vote for me now doesn't mean that they're still going to vote for Dunleavy in the general election. That's just not simply the case. Here's what I've been telling folks, and it has been very frustrating. You're absolutely right. Gail Fanumia has been doing a horrible job. She should never have been rehired. That was a disaster. And that is this. Ranked choice is really very simple in how you should approach it. You vote for your favorite candidate, period. And then you rank according to as much as your conscience allows. So, for example, I think you just mentioned a second ago, I will never rank Lisa Murkowski. All right, she's not somebody I can rank in good conscience. I don't know of a Democrat running right now I can rank in good conscience. But that's what I've been telling my supporters. So I've been telling folks whenever they ask how to do this. But you're right. I mean, everywhere I go, everybody thinks that there's ranked choice on the primary ballot, and we have to correct, no, there's not ranked choice on the primary ballot except for the congressional race. So it gets very confusing for folks. Can't wait to get in there and repeal this thing.
No, I mean, I think there's going to be a huge push to repeal it after people have a chance to actually experience it for the first time. And
Yes.
And especially with the confusion of having a special election on the same day as a primary, there'll be enough confusion there to be part of it. Now, let me go back to what you just said, talking about you don't own the votes. I don't think that you do own the votes, but I think that there is a contingency that is frustrated and that your campaign has appealed to. That has basically said Dunleavy has failed us, which, again, I'm not disagreeing with, but that they have said, I'm going to rank, because I've seen the comments in my own chat room, I'm going to vote for one and done. I'm voting for Kirka if he's on the ballot. I'm going to vote for him, and I'm not voting for anybody else. And I think strategically, that's a huge mistake. Because if you were number 4 and did not get all 50+1% of the vote in that first round of voting, then their votes disappear and they are disenfranchised for participating in subsequent rounds of voting. I may not like Dunleavy, but I like Dunleavy a whole hell of a lot better than I like Bill Walker or Les Guerra. And so there has to be a messaging here where people understand that you can't just say, I hate this guy, and so I'm just not going to vote for him. I'm going to vote for my one and done, because the likelihood of anybody getting a first round 50% is excruciatingly low.
It's basically impossible. You're absolutely right about that. It's funny. I've actually talked to people who told me. One guy told me he wasn't going to vote for me, and he was also going to go to the polls and do it like he normally does. He was not going to rank anything. I just couldn't believe it. I was kind of speechless that he wasn't going to rank anybody else or on any race, and I was just kind of stunned by that. So there's a lot of confusion. Part of it, some people just want to protest the system, which, okay, I get it. We hate the system, but it's the system we have, and we have to use it this election in the best way possible. So I totally get what you're saying with that. And people need to, like I said, they need to rank candidates as much as their conscience will allow. And if you might, if you could vote for somebody in a situation, then rank them. But like I said, I'm telling folks that I'm not going to rank Lisa Murkowski. That's where I'm coming from.
Well, so I guess my question is, in the governor's race, if you are the fourth candidate and it comes down to the ranked choice voting, will you rank Governor Dunleavy as second behind yourself to prevent, in a defensive posture, to defend against a Guerra or a Walker governorship?
I don't make any public. I'm not making a public endorsement of Dunleavy, but I have to agree with you. Bill Walker, we've seen what he is. He's a disaster.
Right.
We've seen we know what Lesker is. He was in the legislature for 10 plus years, or what about that, and he's left of marks, and we know what they're going to do. So I think you're right. We have to rank according to our conscience, and also, I guess this will be my last pitch to voters. I have a record. I ran for office to the House, and it was difficult, but I kept all those promises. I voted against every bloated budget like I promised. I fought for the preborn. I fought for the dividend. We voted for it 32 times. If you want somebody who's going to fight and fight hard for the values they ran on, then we're your ticket. If you want somebody who's going to play hardball with the legislature and not just roll over when the going gets tough, then we're your candidate. And I think there's a lot of folks that are frustrated. They want a fighter, and they're not seeing it in Dunleavy.
Well, and I guess my question is, especially when you just said defending, fighting against bloated budgets and defending the PFD, you had the opportunity to pass a fully funded PFD off, and yet you chose not to support that. In fact, there was, just a couple votes, and you were one of the couple votes that decided that the full PFD was too much for people, whether it was too much on the budget or whatever it was. How do you defend that? There was an opportunity there to take a stand, and it may not even have passed if you had said yes, but you had an opportunity and you said no.
Thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. So again, we had 32 votes on the dividend at budget votes where they were voting on an amendment to increase the budget or to not increase the budget, but to effectively increase the budget, but to increase the dividend up to the statutory level, or I even sponsored amendments to pay back pay. What you're talking about was a concurrence vote, which did two things. We were approving the changes made by the other body, which one of those changes I liked, obviously. We're increasing the dividend to the full statutory amount plus some back pay. I liked that change, but other changes I couldn't support, such as the stripping out of the language that we had in the House that banned abortion funding, the fact that we now had the biggest budget in state history, the fact we had all the union contracts and other garbage in there that I couldn't support. So when you're voting on and the thing is, when you're voting on a concurrence vote, you're doing two things. You're voting to approve the changes that the other body made, but you're also voting on the whole package for it to become law as a budget. And when I ran for office, one of my huge criticisms of my opponent was that she voted for some of the biggest budgets in state history. And now, lo and behold, I have the new biggest budget in state history with the height of hypocrisy for me to turn around after telling my constituents the enemy of the PFD is these big budgets. See, I'm not looking to win a one-time battle, one-time payout. I'm looking to win a war.
Well, and
big government in Alaska is the enemy of the dividend.
Chris, I'm going to have to put you on hold here because I'm up against the break. I will talk to you during the break. We got Chris Story coming up here. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. I want to dissect this for a second to get a second on this, because here's the thing. The one thing that could have made a huge difference, and yes, it was already a bloated budget. It was going to be a bloated budget no matter what, because they had all this money at their fingertips. But you could have, made a difference in the lives of hundreds of thousands of Alaskans. The stripping out of the language of the abortion language that had been put in the budget for years and strictly ignored. So again, it was not any kind of win.
That's actually not correct. So what we've had in the budget for years is intent language. But what we put in the budget in the House was binding language. And the thing of the matter is the legislative branch has the authority of the purse. And it's been ignored because we've had courts that have overstepped their authority and said, well, we're going to appropriate now. And we need a governor who's going to follow the intent of the legislature, or in this case, it would have been binding law. Ledge Finance even, told us that, hey, actually, this is not like we normally have. This is binding language that they can't ignore. It would have been binding law. The governor could not have used Medicaid funds to pay for abortions. Now, I see your point, but here's when it comes down to it, here's the deal. Even if I say broken my campaign promises and I voted for this big budget and I sacrificed my principles, we still would not have gotten the $5,500 dividend. It was a farce. It was never going to happen. There was never the votes among other legislators for the full dividend. We've had those votes over and over and over again all session long. And I don't blame Senator Schauer or those in the Senate who took advantage of the opportunity with Natasha being gone and amending the budget. They did the right thing by putting it in there. But at the end of the day, I'm still voting for the biggest budget in state history. And nothing would have changed. Practically speaking, nothing would have changed if I had changed my vote.
Chris Kirka,
other than me sacrificing my principles.
Chris Kirka, our guest. I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree on this. I look at it again as, a sacrificing of, kudos to you, I guess, for standing on a principle that basically, in my opinion, would have by passing this budget or by putting, which again, it passed anyway. Here's my thing. It's passing anyway. There could have been some good done if it had passed with a full statutory PFD. It was going anyway. That was the direction. We could all read the wind. We knew it was coming. Right. If nothing else, the people would have benefited after the pandemic, the recession, everything else, all the bad stuff that we've just talked about. But if you felt like that was going to be a bad thing, then
and there's another. No, I don't think that would have been a bad thing. That would have been a very good thing. But there's a component here that we're missing, and that is this. Going into the vote, I knew several things because it was very clear in the public. The governor had agreed to cut $1,300 off the top of that. He had given up on fighting for the full statutory dividend and was now doing his 50-50 plan, which was a substantial reduction from the full statutory dividend. So we already knew he committed to cutting $1,300. He likely was going to cut down to his 50-50 plan. It was never going to be the full statutory dividend or the plus the back pay.
So you're saying that the governor would not have supported if a full PFD and a concurrence had come out and it was a full statutory PFD. You're saying the governor would have cut it.
Based upon it was kind of in the press. There was very public. There was legislators who were meeting with him, Bart LeBon and others who hate the dividend, who have consistently voted against the dividend. In order to get their votes, which were needed to pass the budget, to pass the concurrence vote, he had to agree to cut at least the $1,300 off the top. And the governor has not been able to get people like Bart on board with his 50-50 plan because the Bart doesn't even want to spend that much on the dividend. There just wasn't the votes to pay for the full dividend right there. And so if those legislators were going to vote for that, they were going to get some concessions out of the gate. And that's what was reported in the press going into the vote. But we didn't know how much. We didn't know how much the cut was going to be. We knew at least $1,300, but we didn't know how much more. So again, it would have been kind of shooting in the blind of, hey, I'm going to vote for this, hoping we get the $5,500, breaking my other campaign promises.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't, at the end of the day, we still wouldn't have gotten it.
Chris Kirka, appreciate you calling in, my friend. I'm sorry the ding means that we're coming back out of commercial break. I got to let you go. Thanks for sounding off, and thanks for letting us hear your thoughts. We appreciate it. All right, folks, we're coming up on the break. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Okay. Welcome back to the program. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Well, it was a toss up there whether I wanted to keep Chris Kirk on for a little bit longer. Interesting conversation during the break. You can go back and listen to it on the podcast, but I decided that I really needed my adult pick-me-up today. Chris Story, the man from Homer, comes in. to give us the weekly uplift and positivity update. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Uh-oh, did you say adult?
Adult. I did say adult. Is that hard to swallow? Hard to believe?
Whenever we're watching a program and it says adult content or warning, this for adults only or something like that, or mature audiences, that's what it is. Mature audiences, I'll turn to Tiffany and go, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, can't do it. Give me a little bit more volume there, Chris. You're a little low here this morning, which is not right for you because you're never low.
No,
you should be.
Need to be high. That's right. If you're going to be on the Michael Duke show, you better be high.
Exactly. We're on top of the. Wait a minute. Anyway, so what's on your agenda today, Chris? How are you going to teach us to be better us?
That's a good question. In fact, it's a better question is you sent me an article about liberty as a philosophy,
as a life philosophy.
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool article, and I enjoyed it. And I don't know, we could sit here and dissect the article, or just take my main takeaway from that article you sent, which was, like I said, a really good read. But having a philosophy, be it liberty, be it something, have a personal philosophy in your own life. It's a code that you live by, your guiding philosophy. What is it? And have you one? And have you thought about it? And libertarian, obviously you're a libertarian, Michael, and you hang that shingle out high and let everybody see it. I think it's cool when you think about liberty as a philosophy of life. It really struck me.
Well, maybe we should let's take a single theme today, and then next week maybe we can walk through this, because this article, as you said, was fascinating, and I'll drop it in the chat room for folks who want to take a look at it and read it, because it really is. It's really thought-provoking. It's Why Liberty is a Life Philosophy from Lawrence Reed over at the FEE, which is the free, what is that, Foundation for Economic Enterprise? I can't remember whatever FEE is. I read a lot of their stuff, but this article was passed on to me by one of the Common Sense Core members, and I read this and I went, wow, this is like self-improvement. This is good stuff. And so maybe give me your one takeaway from it, and then let's next week we can dissect it a piece at a time. But, let's talk about having a life philosophy.
Yeah, I think it's really important. In fact, on my program, a number of years ago, I decided to codify it in a nutshell. People would ask me, hey, what's your show going to be about today? Well, and if I didn't have a guest or a particular topic, I would say, well, I don't know. You just tune in and you'll see it. And I realized that it actually always is about a philosophy, which is in three parts: to look forward in life. And basically that's goal setting. That's looking at tomorrow. It's looking at where you want to go. It's where you're aiming, with a warning: don't live there, but aim somewhere, but don't live into the future, but look forward, and then learn from the past. And essentially that is to take into account what you've done, what's gone before you. It could even be, you could even envelop gratitude into that, learning from the past. I am so grateful for where we've been as a country, as a people, where I've been, even the suffering that I've gone through in life. I'm grateful for it. I've learned from it. But then ultimately, and most importantly, live in the present. So now when people say, hey, what's your show about today? Well, it's about looking forward, learning from the past, but never forgetting that the good life is lived right here in the present. And underlying this whole philosophy in a sentence is essentially, Michael, you were born on purpose. You were born on purpose and with a purpose. And that is my philosophy. That is my philosophy of life. And I could absolutely take liberty, and Mr. Potato Head it just right, just plug and play, just put it right into there. Say, right. Absolutely, liberty fits into this. Absolutely, Christianity fits into my philosophy of life, and in fact is woven indelibly into these things I just mentioned. Everything that we do in life is based on our philosophy, whether we recognize it, codify it, and put it in writing, or put it into 3 bullet points or not. We have a philosophy. What's yours? Are you living it? Are you sharing it? Are you living in such a way that it's obvious to the world what your philosophy is, even if it's counter to what you say it is?
Right. Well, I mean, that was one of the. I don't want to get too far into the article up until next week, but that was the whole gravestone marker. What do you want on your tomb? He held to his principles sometimes, or he acted good when everybody was watching him, but not when his. Or do you want it to be, he is the light and he does it. He brought people to his cause. He was play. There's so many things that I think could be wrapped up in that. And yes, letting people be people, letting them do what they do, having a philosophy of tolerance and understanding, even for those that don't agree with you and that disagree with you, not attacking them, but trying to persuade them, not using force. I mean, there's a lot of things that are baked into that. And I guess it all comes back down to you controlling you. You and I have talked about that a lot. What is your reaction to circumstances or to things that happen to you? It's the one thing you can control.
Absolutely. And people whose philosophy, whether they would admit it or not, people whose philosophy is victimization, victimhood. And everywhere they go, they find it. They find an oppressor. They're yoked by everyone and everybody around them just because it's circumstantially there. They can see it. They're good with a hammer, so the problem becomes a nail, and it's their philosophy of life, and it's a sad philosophy. I was talking to somebody recently who said they're having a rough time. No particular reason, not economically speaking, not it's just everything. All the dots started to connect in this person's life as being difficult right now. There's some suffering, mild as it were, but it's collectively is creating a cloud over this person's life. And they said, and I found this to be extremely fascinating and dovetailing into what you and I are talking about. They said, but you know what I started doing, Chris? I started keeping a gratitude journal. I've heard about it. I know other people that have done it. I've heard you talk about it, but I started doing it myself. And man, I feel better. You can't help but feel better when you begin to recognize and start looking for what's right versus what's wrong. And optimism can be a philosophy, is a philosophy. In fact, I open my show quite frequently with the optimist creed, in that you have something within you that is worth pursuing regardless of the circumstance you find yourself within today. It may be negative, it may be ill health, it may be something's going wrong. But if you begin to look for what's right in the world, you're going to find it, and you'll feel better. You'll contribute more. You'll be financially better off. Everything, your relationships will all be better off as a result of that. Adopt it as a philosophy. If you feel like I don't really have a philosophy of life really outside of maybe my religion, which is great, but I'm talking about something you've individualized for you, adopted into your daily life, and it becomes a practice.
Because I think that's the thing. You have to live it. You have to live, it can't just be how do I want to put this? I mean, it can't just be something that you pull out on Sundays. I mean, speaking of like religion, it can't be something that you just pull out every now and then or when you're in front of a crowd. It has to be something, a touchstone, a guide stone that you are, that you, again, weave into every decision that you make, all the different decisions that you make in your life.
I just pulled out a book as a result of reading that article you'd sent me. I pulled out a book on my library bookshelf called Thanks, and it's a study of gratitude by Dr. Emmons. And I read this book before, but I wanted to just kind of pull out some science and some research, because there's so many people that would hear a conversation and overhear a conversation that you and I are having, Michael, and think, what a couple of Pollyannas, get their heads stuck in the ground. Haven't they seen the news? Don't they know that Mar-a-Lago was just raided? Don't they know that there's going to be a 125-degree heat wave through the center of the country in 2053? Don't they know what's coming? And yet at the same time, we have a philosophy, we have an opportunity, I should say, to adopt a philosophy of changing, taking personal responsibility right where you are with what you've got and changing the outcome of your circumstance. And if enough of us do that, we'll have a global change. We'll have a national change. We'll have an uprising of optimism such that we can make it a reality in this country. And just like that shining city on the hill that Reagan said we were in America, we once again could be the beacon of optimism and goodness and liberty and freedom and everything that is baked into our Constitution and into our founding. But again, it comes to you, the individual link in the chain. You must have your philosophy. You must have your affairs in order, and you must be sweeping your own porch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's again, the bottom line of every episode of Chris Story on the Michael Duke Show seems to be, if you get yourself right, everything else will follow. That if there's enough people out there getting themselves right, if there's enough people out there getting themselves put together and being able to handle these things, then collectively things will start to get better as a whole. And I think that's where it all starts. I mean, this is what I preach this is why I don't normally talk about national stuff, because I feel like the changes that we can make are on the small level, the local level, the grassroots. And this just takes that one step further to the individual. You as an individual have to do it. And if you could spread that message to other people as they take care of it and self-help themselves, then all of a sudden you've got a whole group of people who are thinking the same thing.
Exactly. I agree 100%. And my philosophy has bled into my work with the Backyard Millionaire. In essence, I have set a goal, and I'm speaking from wherever I can, whatever platform I can, to share this goal of helping 1,000 people in the next 24 months become backyard millionaires, owning and controlling 4 homes in their own backyard. That's $1 billion worth of economic impact that I'm wanting to have in other people's lives. And that is a personal philosophy that will spread and do good. No matter how close to reaching my goal I get or not, I'll be doing the best I can with what I've got. Unelected, unappointed. Nobody has, pushed me to the top of some hierarchy based on my bloodline. This is simply a personal goal and a philosophy that I want to share with 1,000 people over the next 24 months. And as a result, could have a major financial impact in individual lives and collectively statewide and nationwide.
Right, because nobody's voting for Chris Story. I mean, come on.
No.
Nobody's voting for Chris Story. But they may listen to him when it comes to real estate and advice and bettering their own lives. I know that I do. Chris Story, the man from Homer. You can find him at ilovehomeralaska.com. The name of his book, well, multiple books, but The Backyard Millionaire, he was just talking about. He's got the Backyard Millionaire podcast as well. And, of course, his books, Born to Live and The Making of Man, which are both amazing in their different ways. One's fiction. The other was fictionalized self-help, but they're just really, really good. And I'm glad to have you on, my friend. I needed a little bit of an uplift today, and I appreciate you, as always, coming on and sharing with us.
Thank you. And thanks for the education on the voting process. It is murky to say the least. So thanks for your update.
Well, it's going to be a little messy. Although Brian just said in the chat room, he said he just came back from voting, and he said it's not that hard, not hard at all. 2 minutes in the booth. Well, hopefully we contributed to that education to make it easy. So Chris, thanks so much for coming on board today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. My pleasure.
All right, folks, we are out of time for this segment. We got one final segment coming up. I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone lines because why not? Why not? Let's get it going on. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right, we're in the break right now. Chris Story, our guest. We're getting ready to jump back over to the telephones there. We'll got all the lines. I had them on hold here. We'll get the lines on hold and see where we're at here. We're going to jump back into this here in just a moment. We've got one call on hold right now. Phone number to call is going to be 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. So we'd love to hear from you. If you would like to sound off and be part of it, we would love that. We'd love to hear it. Let's see. For the crickets, was scrolling as it delivered this. For my information, it's raking out. It's raining out. Oh, it's raining. Yeah. Well, again, I mean, yeah, that not surprising that it is raining out. I just saw an article. One of the articles was talking about this is the wettest August on record for the South Central area. They've gotten like 3.88 inches of rain, which is 2.5 inches more than the next biggest record. And we're only halfway through the state, or halfway through the month. So yeah, no, it's definitely no shortage of rainfall in Alaska this week. That's for sure. Let's go over to the phones and get this caller's name and where they're calling from so that when we return to the radio, we have an idea of who we're speaking with. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Eric. I'm calling out of North Pole.
Hello, Eric in North Pole. Hold the line, my friend. You will be first up in the queue when we return to the radio, and we will start with your phone call. So don't go anywhere. Permanent fund, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going back through some of the comments. And let's see. For those who contended that Kirk, let me just go over here and read this. For those who contended that Kirk could have done something to pass a concurrence, I have a simple question. The Democratic caucus was a binding caucus for a reason. If Kirk, Eastman, and Kaufman had gone along with a concurrence, do you actually think Louise wasn't going to call those votes? I would submit to you that the Democrats who voted for concurrence did so only because Louise allowed them to, because she didn't need their votes. My argument for that would be we don't know. It's possible. Foster may have voted that way anyway because he knows how important it is to his constituency. I heard similar to what Politidic asserted. He said, I heard that from the 18 House members was that Kirka and Eastman's votes, the no votes, convinced others to vote no, hence the 22 yays and only 18 yays. But we just don't know. We just don't know. This is a vote that obviously he's going to have to live with. And however he wants to justify it, to spin it, to save it, to sell it, however you want to put it, whatever the justification is, the bottom line is that it ended up in the long run costing Alaskans a lot of money, and Alaskans who could have used that money. It's a hard thing to do. Governor didn't have the veto backing of his party, so you didn't have the courage. Governor didn't have the veto backing of his party, so you didn't have the courage to let him do his job and cut the hell out of the budget. I mean, again, hearing that the governor may have cut the budget, to me, is not a justification. That would have been on him then. You could have said, I voted for the PFD for you, the people, and the governor cut it. I mean, it would have been, if that's the case, I don't think the governor would have cut it. But that's the thing. And I am not buying the whole thing about this ironclad language in the thing about abortion. That is not the way that I read it, and it's not the way that I understood it. Maybe I'm just not up. Maybe I'm just not up on it. But the way I understood it is that it was pretty much identical language to what had been put in before and blatantly ignored by other administrations, and it really didn't matter. And again, anyway, I got nothing else. I got nothing else on that. Let's go over. I got one more line on hold, so let's go over there, get their name, so that we can talk to them here in just a second. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning. This is Al from Fairbanks.
Hey, Al. You're number 2 in the queue. And you're really loud and hissy, but I'm going to put you on hold. So you're going to be number 2 in the queue. You may want to come to a stop or a resting place when we get to you, just so that we can hear you, because I can hear a lot of road noise there over that. Or maybe if you've got the phone on Bluetooth, maybe hold it up to your ear so that I can hear you. But Al, we'll be back to you here in just a moment. We'll see what we got to say. All right, 25 seconds before we rejoin the radio. Please like and share this video if you're on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe and ring the bell to get the notifications when we go live. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do it. Here we go. All right, welcome back to the program. We're opening up the lines on this election day. Don't forget to go get your voter information and your polling location from myvoterinformation.alaska.gov. That's where you go to figure out where you're supposed to vote. Let's go over to the phones. Eric is in North Pole. He wanted to start off here in this segment. Good morning, Eric. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, good morning. Hey, wanted to give you a heads up. I just got done voting at the City Hall out in North Pole, and there is an issue with this ranked choice voting.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what the issue is. The issue is that when you go to feed your ballot into the machine, if you did not rank choice vote in the way that you chose to, i.e. each candidate gets a number, it's going to kick your ballot back out. And I'll give you a prime example. I voted for my two favorite, and then I closed it out. My second guy, I just bubbled it in all the way across the board. I chose to do that solely based off the fact that I knew that my two top votes would count, and that machine kicked it out. And not only did it kick it out, but the election official decided to check my ballot as to why it kicked it out, which invaded my privacy on my voting. So we have issues.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. You will invalidate your ballot if it's not filled. If they're empty, that's one thing. But they've already said if you fill in a bunch of bubbles that aren't supposed to be there, the machine kicks it out. And it's so, yeah, but people are confused. They want to protect their ballot, but at the same time, they don't want to have to vote for other candidates. So, I mean, I definitely I see why you did it, and I see the confusion, and I see the frustration. What was the reaction? Did you bring this to the election officials' attention? What was the reaction?
I did. I said, hey, look, if I just mark anything I want on this, it's my ballot. It's my vote. You shouldn't have a say on how I vote, because if you go back and you look at the state election site, it tells you every single type of scenario you fill in on that. So let's say, for example, if I pick number 1 for the ranked choice and number 2 for the ranked choice, and then my number 2 person, if I decide to bubble them in for the 3rd and 4th ranked choice, that means that 3rd and 4th choice doesn't count. And it's only going to count my number 1 and my number 2.
Right.
That is a true statement based off of the state election. Well, if I do that and I put it in the machine kicks it back out. So it goes against everything that the state election site states on how you fill it out and what votes will count. I could care less if somebody goes in there and puts their thumbprint on it. That's their choice. The state election shouldn't be kicking ballots back out of the box to have some election official tell me how I should be filling it out. That's an invasion of privacy.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I agree with you. I think it's definitely problematic. Like I said, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are very frustrated by the time this whole thing is over. I appreciate you giving us the heads up on that, Eric. Thank you for calling in and being.
Hey, have a good day, Michael.
Being part of it today. Al is up in Fairbanks. Al, what's on your mind this morning?
Yeah, I missed the show this morning with Brad. But I was wondering, did you ever ask him what the term sustainable budget means when we have a budget every year?
We've talked about that in the past. It basically, it's income and outflow is usually what the sustainability portion of it means, meaning that we're not spending more than we're taking in, and that we're paying the full dividend and things like that. So that's generally speaking. We haven't spoken about the sustainable part for a couple, 3 years, but I mean, he's always willing to engage on Facebook or Twitter if you're out on there. And maybe he can answer, if he's listening now, maybe he can answer that next week.
Well, I'm just curious because, the budget's done every year. So what you're talking about is long-term for many, many years, the future of what a sustainable budget is. But if you do a budget every year, how could you say it's sustainable or not if you pass it or fail it?
Well, I mean, I think it basically, again, it comes back to making sure that your income and your outgo are the same instead of, I mean, we dipped into, 16, $17 billion worth of savings over the course of 6 or 7 years. And I think that's where the whole sustainability idea came in, Al.
Okay.
All right.
That's what I was just curious about. It just seemed odd for me for the terminology.
All right. Thanks for your call. I appreciate it. Let's go over here on this election day. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Morning. This is Ray, North Pole.
Hello, Ray. What's on your mind?
Yeah, if on this ballot, I got an example ballot here. If you don't want to vote for anybody in, say, the state representative District 33, can you leave it blank?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can always leave any bubble blank. That will not affect it in one way or the other.
Yeah, I was disappointed to see somebody didn't run against Cracks because he told me that he works with Lisa Murkowski and he also stands against the small miners. So he's not getting my vote. He's the only one running in that district. So
right,
I don't want to vote for him.
Yep, you could leave that.
Okay, thank you.
Leave that blank. That'll be fine. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate it, Ray. 433-3150, 433-3150. Let's go over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning. This is Tawny in Willow.
Hello, Tawny. What's on your mind?
Well, first, I'd like to say happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you.
From a fellow August baby.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, I took a couple of days off in celebration of our joint birthdays and did not make the show this morning.
Oh, okay. Well,
but I was curious. Did you see the Alaska Family Council endorsement list?
I did not.
Okay. I found it interesting that they chose not to select anyone in House District 27.
Okay, which district again? You have to remind me. I'm still trying to get caught up on the new numbers.
Right. That's currently Eastman's new district, which is got, let me see, it's got I have it right here. Hang on one sec. It's got Brendan Carpenter and Stuart Graham running against him.
Mm-hmm. So they chose not to endorse any of them at that point.
They didn't list them at all in their endorsement listing.
That's interesting. I wonder, no justification why, of course, just they didn't endorse anybody.
Of course not.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Well, interesting. I don't know what that says exactly, but we'll have to find out. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. I got one more call on hold. Thank you, Tawny. Over here quickly. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Cindy from Homer.
Hello, Cindy. Quickly.
If you were stating earlier that it was unlikely anyone would get 51%. So what if a person left the first one blank and started with their favorite on number 2?
It's very possible. That is a strategy that we've talked about in the past that some of the experts on ranked choice have said. You can vote for your second choice first and your first choice second. They may have a higher percentile chance of making it in the second round. There's a lot of strategy that goes behind this, Cindy. That's one of the reasons why people find it frustrating. I'm sorry, I got to go. Tomorrow's another day, folks. Have a great one. Be kind, love one another, live well. Cindy, I'm sorry. I was up against the break there. And she hung up. So, I mean, it's a good question. It will kick out if you don't rank them all. They are supposed to know to put it in again. It should accept it. Any election worker who says they must see your ballot should be fired on the spot and replaced unless you personally ask them to look at it. I'm sorry. I'm just going to post this whole thing up here real quick. Election workers are supposed to know if it will kick it all. Election workers are supposed to know it will kick it all out the first time if you don't rank them all. They are supposed to know to put it in again, and it should accept it. If election workers who says that they must see your ballot should be fired on the spot and replaced unless you personally ask them to look at it. Even if they do, they should only help if something is wrong. Never should they tell you how to vote. They should all know you don't have to rank them all. I think the problem there, Politidic, was that he had ranked his second choice or his first choice all the way down the line, and that throws a lot of heebies into the system. So it's part of the problem. We'll see what happens. This is going to be an interesting day. If I want to draw a huge smiley on my ballot, I should be able to, said Sean. Yup. I agree. All right, my friends. Well, thank you so much for today. We appreciate you guys coming out and being part of it. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Don't forget, go out and vote. Get it done.
Goodbye.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Well.